Hi everyone. Okay, so my name is Nicholas Pezzaro. I'm product manager at Pocket Gems, and I'm going to talk about events. And events are funny because whenever I talk to anyone who's not actually working in games, they get confused and they ask me like, so do you set up like meetups or like tournaments? I'm like, no, it's an in-game event. It's a digital event. So let's chat about how those work and why they're important and how they can help you boost your monetization, retention, and gameplay variety. So we'll start with just a basic introduction. So I don't know about the games that you work on, but for War Dragons, events are actually a really key contributor to our revenue. And we actually have a system that we've built that exists outside of our client code, so we're able to be flexible and iterate on our events and kind of change things on the fly if we need to, which is actually pretty important for the nature of events we've found. And yeah, the final point is that running events isn't easy. Anything related to live ops tends to be pretty challenging, trying to balance all the different needs of your company in the game and also like what your community expects. So hopefully I can give you guys some useful points on that. So we'll start with gameplay variety. So events help a lot with gameplay variety because outside of like the regular content of your game, you have a fresh new thing that happens every week or 2 weeks or whatever cadence you choose. And my opinion is that events actually bring abundance to the game. So like because of the fact that they change, that you can iterate on them, they can keep updating them, you can bring in new stuff, you can bring in lore, you can bring in new prizes. There's all this exciting stuff that wouldn't happen otherwise without events. And I actually have an example from our game, which is an event called Fortification Frenzy, which is where players earn points for leveling up their buildings and spending lumber. And we actually have a graph here. These are lumber balances over a period of time. And those two big dips that you see are actually the Fortification Frenzy event. So there's this really cool moment before the event starts where everyone is like bouncing lumber between each other, meaning that they're transferring stockpiles. But while they're in transit, they can't be stolen by other players. And they're also like frantically waiting for the event to start to spin all their lumber at once before it just drops out from the economy. And it got so intense that we actually decided to add in a little series of tweaks that run during the event that boost production so that people still have something to scavenge for during the event. Yeah, continuing on gameplay variety. Another great thing about events is that if you're a team that's heavily invested in the game, you're probably going to be gunning really hard on the core loop, but also on events. And if you're a team that's maybe a little less invested or in a really tough league, you actually have the option of choosing to like fight hard in events or in the core loop, or I guess do middle ground for both, but it feels nice to win at something. So part of that is, yeah, you kind of have a secondary objective that you can aim for. So if you're struggling in your league, maybe you don't aim for matchmaking rating, you aim more for event score and like placing high in your league. Another great thing about events is that since it's not like your core game, since it's something ephemeral, it's limited time, it doesn't necessarily have to come back, you can actually try risky things. So here I included a screenshot of an event which we called the High Seas event. And basically, it's very different from War Dragons in that it features permanent destruction. There's continents that you can capture. There's like mines that you capture around the world map and like bring resources back to your base. And it's all very different from our core game. But we were able to send it out to players, have them play it, get a bunch of feedback, and potentially we're going to release it in a future version of the game now that's polished and ready to go. But if we'd done this as a client feature, we probably would have had a much different experience because like once it's in, people expect it to stay, and then we'd be kind of stuck with this crazy, huge, complicated model that we can't necessarily change as much as we would like to. All right, on to monetization. So obviously monetization is very important. If you don't have money and you aren't receiving money from your users, eventually your game is going to die, unless it's like an altruistic project, but there's only so much you can do with that. So I actually included another screenshot here from our game, which is our monthly prizing. So because events are limited time, we have the option of having really cool prizes that players can earn by getting points throughout the event. And we built on that by creating monthly prizing. So over the course of a month, players who participate in each event throughout the month actually get special prizes that are even better than the ones contained within the individual events. And so this makes it so that if you're a player who comes back often and engages in the events and competes at a high level, you get like an even better reward at the end of the month. And this screenshot is showing a dragon called Necroth. So throughout the events, you earn fragments for Necroth, and as you level them up, you unlock prizes. And then you can get like special portraits, special tower fragments that you can only get through events, that kind of stuff. And players really love the monthly prizing. Another great thing for events and monetization is that events create a different set of expectations. So the thing about your core game is that it's sort of like set in stone. They come in, they play the game, they level up, and like things change as they're leveling, but they sort of expect the game to behave in a certain fashion. But with events, since they come and go and they change over time, you're able to sort of switch around parameters, maybe add in new things, maybe take away things, and players don't find that quite as upsetting. And also, what we've taught our players is that when an event is running, there's a lot of value there for you to get. So, for example, our value packs, which is what we have like our bundled IAPs together, during events they run and they have a much higher value than they would otherwise. So players know that like when an event starts, it's a great time to buy value packs, and those value packs also coordinate and are optimized for the event. So it incentivizes them to fight in the event, and then as they're in the event, they're doing stuff that benefits them in game, leveling up their dragons, like fighting other players, leveling up their base, but they're also earning points that then give them rewards. So it creates this like super rewarding, engaging scenario where like they really feel compelled to participate and they very much enjoy it. And actually, because of that high monetization potential, we can include like really exciting prizes. And this is something that we do that's a little different from a lot of games, is that we have custom portraits, custom statues, those kind of things that we make for our players. So we started this with the great contest in December, where over the course of the month, the top teams in the Diamond League, which is our best league, they fought, and based on their event score, they were like ranked accordingly. And so the top team, which was called Dreadnought, they got to design their own statue for the event island, which is really cool. So when the event starts, there's an event island that comes up, and there's a special statue that they designed themselves. So everyone has to see their statue until it changes. And then they also got to make a custom portrait. So that's a picture of their portrait. And then we're building on that in 2016 with something that we call seasons. So we have season 1 and we have seasonal rewards. And those rewards are different leaderboards that you place on based on like your individual team performance. And then there are different rewards associated with that. So like if you're the top team in Diamond, you get a special statue. If you're one of the top 100 teams globally, you get a special monument on your base. And if you're in the top 100 players globally, you get your middle building on your island. It's gilded like gold or silver or bronze, depending on your placement. So onto retention. Obviously, retention also very important, especially for your elder players. So as your players get older, in terms of like game days, they become more valuable to your game because they're more engaged, they spend more, they're invested. And events help a lot with boosting retention for those elder players. Also for the younger players, but the way that our events work, we tend to attract the elder players more so. So we found that events that require high coordination and complexity really appeal to our veteran players. And then the more kind of simple events help bring our new players into the game. And that helps with retention across the board. And another really fun little anecdote is like, for our top players and teams, placement in events is like really highly contested and prestigious. And we saw this unexpectedly when we introduced the global team leaderboards. Before, between leagues, teams didn't know like how they placed. But with the global leaderboards, everyone saw like how they placed on like a global scale. And some of our like lower league teams in Platinum were getting more points as a team than teams in Diamond. And so they were like making fun of the Diamond League teams and being jerks. And like I had a discussion with some of our Diamond players, and they're saying how much they hate like these specific teams because they always give them a hard time. So it's fun to see that sort of joking spirit. Here I've included a screenshot from our forums, and basically, it shows just how engaged people are with events. So like whenever an event comes up, we'll have a ton of questions, people discussing strategy, maybe complaining about drops from the armory, wanting to change things, giving feedback. But it's really great because like even if the feedback on the forums is kind of negative, or maybe they're not entirely happy, the fact that they come out and talk to us about it shows just how passionate they are about the game and events. Yeah, so that's the talk. In summary, events help and are vital to the success of your game by adding gameplay variety. So limited time plus unique objectives creates a change of pace that's different from what you would usually experience. They also boost monetization, so those exciting prizes, just the fun of participating in the event, and the competition between teams creates another area of the game to invest in that maybe you wouldn't invest as much otherwise, and then also help by lifting retention. So there's lasting challenges, new experiences with new events and changes to events, and team cohesion creates continuously compelling and captivating content. Yeah, so does anyone have any questions? Yeah.
I'm wondering if there's like a sweet spot in how long an event is held and also how often.
That's a great question. So we've actually been exploring that a lot. Right now we're on a weekly cadence, which kind of works with like people's schedules. So, we have the events happen over the weekend. People tend to like that. It fits with their schedule. But in terms of like the sweet spot for like how often an event is held, I think it depends on the event. So we did an experiment actually back in December where we had what we call major events. We had 2 major events running back to back. And those are what I mentioned as like the high complexity, high intensity events. And we actually had a lot of feedback from players. They felt that like, that was too much. It was demanding too much of them. So now mostly we have a minor event, which is sort of a simpler kind of core loop event, building up your dragons, building up your base, and then we have a major event which involves like a lot of fighting, a lot of complexity, a lot of strategy. But we're still doing experiments with like certain events to see like how often we should run them, like how often should a breeding event happen, how often should a building event happen, because you see those dips in the economy, right? So do we need a balance to build up or not? So I mean, I honestly don't have any definite answers on that. We're still figuring that out. But I guess it's important that you do like experimentation and see what these different configurations do. So like, if we hadn't tried the 2 major events in a row, we might have been missing out on a lot of revenue potentially. But we found that like people like felt it was way too much, and we did see a little dip in revenue. Anyone else? It's so bright.
This is one at the front there.
Oh, hi.
Have you done any experimentation in introducing new currencies for the event specifically?
So I guess I didn't really mention it in detail, but so the monthly prizing, we actually, so before we had just like based on the points you earned in the events, but then we changed it to be like the dragon, and you earn fragments for the dragon and level up the dragon. So I guess that would be an experiment introducing a new currency. So like every month there's a new dragon and new fragments that you earn, and you get the fragments through the event prizing and also from the armory, which is like a gotcha system. And we found that to be really successful because that way players can choose to like fight really hard in the events, but if they don't want to, they can just go to the armory, the gotcha, and roll for fragments and get them that way. But everyone can participate depending on how much they're willing to contribute.
Great.